Yeah, my name is Mike Sawyer. I'm with the Citizens Oil and Gas Council in Calgary, Alberta.
Now, you've been, for many years, keeping an eye on the oil and gas industry and chasing after them, trying to get them to be more responsible and so forth. What's your take on the oil industry? What are they doing wrong, and what should they be doing?
Well, I guess my take on the oil and gas industry is that, I mean, the list of things that they are doing wrong would take a very long time to go through, but I think the important concept here is that the oil and gas industry are companies whose mandate is to earn a profit for their shareholders. And generally speaking, I think they operate within the law of the land and are doing what we would expect them to do. I like to turn it around and say, well, who's the real culprit in all this? And the real culprit are the government agencies and the governments. Here in Alberta, we have the Alberta Energy Utility Board. On a national level, we have the National Energy Board, and then the government departments and politicians above that. I think they're the real culprits because their job is to protect the public interest, to do what's best for Canadians, and if we extend that to a global context, to do what's best for all of their citizens in a global context. And what they're saying to the companies is, what you're doing is just fine, go ahead and do it more. And my concern is that in focusing on the companies, which are really doing what we would expect them to do, we're missing the opportunity to focus in on the real culprits, which is bad government making bad decisions because of corrupt or even in the worst case evil reasons, where they are either being funded by or get kickbacks from the industry that they're regulating. So without getting bogged down in all the things that the oil and gas industry is doing, I think the sort of higher level issue is how do we influence government to start making proper and better decisions about energy futures. And one of the things I think encapsulates this is several times I've written to successive energy ministers at a federal level, and I've asked them the question, what is Canada's energy policy with respect to exporting natural gas to the United States? And consistently I get the same answer back. It says we do not have an energy policy, and that the de facto policy is let the market forces prevail. Now, my position on that has always been, because of Canada being a large geography, cold climate with very little population, we are an energy intensive country. And so in those circumstances, does it really make sense that we as a country have never gone through the thinking process to come up with what an energy policy is? Where are we, where have we been, and where do we want to be in 20 or 40 years?
I hear what you're saying, but in a sense here in Alberta, you've got companies that are larger than the government of Alberta in terms of their clout, their revenue, their resources, and so forth. And it sounds reasonable to say the government should be regulating them, but at the end of the day, these folks walk into town and they run the government.
No, there's no question about that, and they run it through several different mechanisms. I mean, one is if you go look at the election contributions listings, which are public knowledge after each election, every one of the big oil companies is making substantial donations to the political parties, not just the ruling Conservatives, but the Liberals and others. But the most obvious method of government control is that the government is earning 25 to 30% of their revenue from oil and gas royalties. So they are not an objective, independent decision maker, because they're talking about if they put in mechanisms to control environmental degradation or anything that constrains oil and gas industry, it means that they get reduced income, so they're not objective. And this is where the analogy that oil and gas revenues are the Alberta government's crack cocaine, and they can't be objective. So the full circle is then that ultimately, at the end of the day, there has to be enough public concern and public opposition to force the politicians to make better decisions, to bring in new laws, make better energy policies. So I mean, that's really the full circle. I don't expect the government to do this on their own. I mean, we have to push them.
So you see this as a positive sign that people are here in Calgary protesting the World Petroleum Congress, getting out in the streets, doing actions?
I think it is a positive sign, and I think that my only concern about this weekend has been the reaction from the establishment from the City of Calgary, from the City of Calgary Police, and the level of intimidation that's happened here, is that we might see less. What we do see in terms of public participation on the street will not be an accurate reflection of how much public concern there is, because most people who have concerns about these issues may be intimidated and not actually participate. So I think this is a really good step. And frankly, in Calgary, if we got 500 people or 1,000 people, that would be remarkable, because this is Calgary.
Now you live here in Calgary.
Yes.
What's going on in terms of the media fear mongering and kind of the police being so paranoid? I mean, is it just fear of the protesters?
I don't think it's fear of the protesters. I think that there's a couple things happening. One is that in Calgary they have the image of Calgary as a good Western town with these cowboy and cattle origins. They are really concerned that if there is an event here would tarnish their image, and I think that's a big part of it. The other thing is that the oil and gas industry in this town is the sacred cow. I mean, to actually question whether or not the oil and gas industry is good for our economy or good for the environment, the majority of people have been trained to just make the immediate but untested assumption, well, of course it is. What are you talking about? And so I think any effort to bring a public attention to oil and gas in Alberta is a very good effort. And what I'm hoping is that, I'm seeing some energy here. What I'm thinking to myself is, how do we capture this energy and use this on ongoing public campaigns to address issues in the oil and gas industry, and broader to address issues in terms of Canada's and the world's energy futures. So this is a very positive thing, and I'm happy to see it.
So is it possible to break through that kind of conspiracy of silence, or a conspiracy of just one side of the issue that seems to be prevalent here in Calgary? I mean, how do you break through it? You've been working at it for a long time.
I think the way that we're going to break through it, I think that all of these activities have increased the public's awareness of the issues. I mean, global warming is on the top of everyone's tongue, and in Alberta, sort of gas flaring and the impacts are on everyone's mind. But I think what's really going to make a difference in the very short term is that because of a number of factors that are coming together in space and time, we're going to see a very dramatic increase in energy prices. And what's interesting and great about that is that it's twofold. One is that people who would not normally think of themselves as overly concerned about the environment are now going to find themselves spending several $100s a month on gas costs, and so that will bring a lot of attention. Bring a lot of attention to the issue from people who are not traditionally concerned about environment. So I think we're going to see an explosion of public concern about these issues. Maybe not for the reasons that we want, but a very broadening of the public debate because of other economic factors. The nice thing about these increased energy prices that we're all going to be burdened with is that now the alternate energy forms like wind, solar, geothermal, which traditionally haven't been economically competitive with hydrocarbons, are now actually going to be very competitive, and because of some of the global warming issues, are in fact going to be more attractive. So the golden lining in this story is that increased energy prices, which are coming, well, they're here, but they're coming even more. Two things is they're going to bring more people into the public debate, and they are going to provide an environment where alternate energy will become viable.
Maybe just last question. You almost sound hopeful, Mike.
Well, you know what this game is like, Tucker. You have to be hopeful, or how do you sustain yourself in the evil empire for a decade and a half of working on oil and gas issues? If you don't have hope, you wouldn't be doing this. And it's going to oscillate between being hopeful and optimistic and just being really angry. And so depending on what time of the day and which day you catch me, depends on what motivates me. So it's somewhere in between.
Anything else you want to add?
I think the only thing is that when you look at our in Alberta, in Canada, in the continent, or at the global scale, it's no longer a question of should we use oil, and when will there be an end to using hydrocarbons as our primary source? It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And the longer we delay that paradigm shift in terms of our energy, the harder the cost will be. And so we ought to be, as a society, proactive in our thinking, and say, the sooner we just make the shift, the better it's going to be. And we ought to do it in a planned, rational way rather than in a crisis mode. And if we follow the lead of the multinationals, they want to milk this for the last dollar, and then at the end of the day, they'll lock up their shops and leave town and leave the rest of us with all the problems. So if we want to be in a better position 20 or 40 years from now, we have to be proactive as a society and make good decisions. And that means people, individual citizens in this city, in this province, at the global level, have to get engaged and tell their politicians that they demand that the decisions they make reflect the public interest.
Cops are watching us.